Hello everyone and welcome to our channel Holistic Facts. So today we are going to cover most important current affairs of April 2021 through questions. Now this will be a revision for you guys. So we know that UPSC doesn't always ask direct questions, but it evaluates your understanding based on related legislations, concepts or backgrounds. So that is what our approach will be for today's video while covering the most important current affairs of 2021, April 2021. Let's begin. So you can do one thing, you can get a paper and pen and jot down your answers so you can self-evaluate how many questions you're getting right. So let's begin with the first question. Consider the following statements regarding Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, that is OPCW. So it was established by Chemical Weapons Convention in 1997. OPCW is a United Nations organization. It can verify the compliance of signatory states, and the states are committed to grant inspectors full access to chemical weapons sites. Select the correct answers using the code given below. You can pause and then write your answer. So option is A, 1 and 3. India's Comptroller and Auditor General has been appointed as external auditor of the OPCW, and that is why this was in news. In past also, our CAC has been an external auditor to this particular organization from 1997 to 2003. OPCW is authorized to perform inspections to verify that signatory states are actually complying with the convention, and for that, complete access has to be given. It also performs testing of sites and of victims of suspected chemical weapon attacks. According to 2001 relationship agreement between the OPCW and the United Nations, the OPCW reports on its inspections and other activities to the UN through the Office of UN Secretary General. But it is not a UN agency. Remember this, it does report to UN, right? But it is not a UN agency. Next, consider the following statement about Glow Litter Partnership Project. The project is implemented by the International Maritime Organization and the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. The project aims to deal with plastic use in air transport across the countries. India is one of the participating countries. Select the incorrect statement using the code given below. So you can pause again. The answer to this particular question is B, 2 only. Around 30 countries from across the ocean have joined the Glow Litter Partnership Project to tackle marine plastic litter. All right, and that is why this was in news. Now, recently, 30 countries have joined, out of which India is one. So, Glow Litter Partnership Project was launched by IMO and FAO, and the initial funding was provided by Government of Norway. But now, 30 countries have joined. This helps the project's aim is to help the maritime, transport, and fishing sectors move towards a low plastic future. This will assist developing countries and will help them in capacity building. And the lead partnering countries are, there are 10 lead partnering countries. You can see the names. Important is that out of them, India is one. All right. So let's see first what marine litter is now. So first of all, it is a form of marine pollution, we all get that, but it can range from the plastic nets, or plastic bags, plastic water bottles, any kind of plastic, from macro plastic to up to micro level plastic. Okay, then why this happens, that because at least 8 million tons of plastic ends up in our oceans every year. It is literally dumped in our oceans, and they make up 80% of marine debris from surface waters to deep sea sediment. Now, a plastic bottle can last up to 450 years in marine environment. So it is very important for that we do not let this plastic reach the marine environment, because it is not going to get degraded easily, and it just simply enters the food chain. Now, recent research has suggested that amount of discarded plastics will outweigh the amount of fish in our oceans by 2050. And if this particular statement does not scare you, I don't know what will. So this tells you how important for us is tackling the marine pollution. Now, significance of this is the project will promote compliance with voluntary guidelines of Marpol Convention. Now, Marpol Convention was actually adopted by IMO, and this particular convention deals with marine pollution caused by transport ships. Okay. Now, further protecting the marine environment is also the objective of SDG 14. This is also important. Um, what SDGs are associated with a particular event or a particular agreement, it is important for us to know from both prelims as well as mains point of view. Then let's take up the next question. Consider the following statement regarding Parliament in India. The Constitution of India empowers Parliament to approve the expenditure of budget of each department and ministry. Article 75 of the Constitution provide that the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the Parliament. Select the correct answer using code given below. Right. So pause and down your answer. It's D. Neither one or two. So the Constitution of India empowers Lok Sabha to approve approve the expenditure budget of each department. Remember this, right? Rajya Sabha has no power to vote on that. It is the Lok Sabha. And similarly, Article 75 states that Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of People or Lok Sabha and not entire Parliament. Next question is, which of the following countries are members of BIMSTEC? Right, so BIMSTEC is a very important organization. Also, we know that in 2020 a question was asked about G20 grouping, right, and it was a direct question about the members. So it is important for us to remember some members from the groupings where India is an important part, right? So your options are India, Maldives, Thailand, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. You can pause and write your answer. It is B, 1, 3 and 5. So only India, Thailand and Sri Lanka out of this. So this was a news because 17th meeting took place. It was hosted virtually by Sri Lanka. Meeting took note that BIMSTEC Center for Weather and Climate being hosted in India is fully functional with the state-of-the-art facilities. So remember that this particular center is in India and it will provide disaster early warnings, and we know that disaster resilience is a very important subject since a few years. Then the Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation, that is BIMSTEC, was conceived in 1997 through Bangkok Declaration. Members are Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Myanmar, Thailand. Significance of this, now this is all kind of static portion, you can pause and you can go over this. It's uh, neighborhood first policy, act east policy of India, then our economic development, our connectivity with the Southeast Asia to counter the China factor, and as an alternative to SAARC because Pakistan has rendered it useless. So let's come to next question. Consider the following statements regarding joint comprehensive plan of action. Now it is an accord signed between Iran and P5 plus Italy in 2015. The time period for applicability of the deal is unlimited unless the P5 or the permanent 5 decide otherwise. IAEA is the designated authority to verify compliance of the deal. You can pause and select the incorrect statement using the code given below. Remember, incorrect statement, right? So answer here is B, 1 and 2 only. So those first two statements are incorrect and only third is correct, right? Because it is between P5 plus Germany, not Italy. So let's see this. This was in news because EU mediated indirect negotiations between USA and Iran. Mediated as in it is an ongoing process. The JCPOA is not reinstated completely yet. Now, let us just know a little bit about the background of this thing, and this much of story will be enough for you to answer any kind of prelims question. So Iran had started its nuclear program in 1950 with the help of US itself under the Atoms for Peace initiative. So remember, if Atoms for Peace initiative is ever asked, it was about civil nuclear deal between Iran and USA. Iran signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty after that in 1968 as part of the 62 original signatories and ratified it in 1970. So it was all well and good until then, all peaceful. But in 2005, IAEA found that Iran is in non-compliance to the Non-Proliferation Treaty safeguards, leading to nuclear-related sanctions on Iran by UN Security Council as well as by USA and the P5. So they actually found out that Iran was enriching uranium more than the levels allowed. Now, after years of negotiation in 2015, finally Iran agreed to curb its nuclear program. with access to inspections in exchange for sanctions relief, right? Because its economy was really affected because of all these sanctions. So POA at that time was an agreement on the Iranian nuclear program that was reached in 2015 between Iran and the P5 plus 1, the permanent members, that is China, France, Russia, UK, US, and Germany. So JCPOA obliged Iran to accept constraints on its enrichment program, verified by an intrusive inspection regime in which IAEA will be the authority, right? In return for partial lifting of economic sanctions, and later, slowly, all the sanctions could have been lifted, but that time did not come because in 2018 USA unilaterally withdrew from this JCPOA, although IAEA had stated that Iran is actually in compliance with the deal, right? So although Iran was in compliance, the United States erstwhile President Donald Trump had opted out of this. He opted out of a lot of agreements and treaty, we all know that. But now that the presidency has changed under Joe Biden, uh, they are trying to again come to a particular understanding with this, so that Iran can also move on and recover its economy. At the same time, Iran should give up its ambition of any kind, right, for acquiring a nuclear weapon. So this is the background. This much is enough for you to answer. Next, consider the following statement. Wholesale price index considers goods and services at wholesale level, unlike CPI, which monitors retail levels. The WPI is published by Office of Economic Advisor in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. RBI had adopted the WPI as its key measure of inflation, considering its wider effect on economy. Select the correct statement using the code given below. So answer to this is C, 2 only. Only the second one is correct. Because remember, in the first sentence what is given is wholesale price index considers goods and services. No, it considers only goods at wholesale level, unlike CPI, which monitors retail levels in both goods and services. Then WPI is by OEA, and then RBI has adopted CPI and not WPI, because CPI is the one that reflects consumer situations properly, not WPI, right? So this was in news because annual rate of wholesale price index is quite high. It stood at 7.39% for the month of March 2021, highest in last 8 years. Now, the WPI reflects changes in the average prices of goods at wholesale level, for which base year is 2011-12. Index is based on wholesale price of basket of 697 commodities. All the static portion you can, go through on your own. Most importantly, it does not consider prices of services, and it does not reflect consumer price situation. Then why do we even have it? So global investors actually track WPI as one of the key macro indicators for their investment decisions, and WPI based inflation estimates serve as an important determinant in formulation of trade, fiscal, and other economic policies by the government. Whereas CPI is used in consumer oriented policies, such as to determine dearness allowance, right? Whenever there is increase in inflation, there is dearness allowance, महंगाई भत्ता भी जिसे बोलते हैं. So consider the following statements with respect to Swamitva scheme. It aims to update the record of rights in the revenue or property registers and issue property cards to the property owners in rural areas. It is a central sector scheme. Ministry of Panchayati Raj is the nodal ministry for implementation of the scheme. Now select the correct answer, right? The answer is D, all of the above. So why was this in news? Because this started in 2020 itself. So Prime Minister of India launched the distribution of e-property cards under this scheme on National Panchayati Raj Day. That was April 24. Now Swamitva, that is survey of villages and mapping with improvised technology in village area scheme, is a collaborative effort of Ministry of Panchayati Raj, State Panchayati Raj departments, State Revenue departments, and Survey of India. It aims to provide integrated property validation solution for rural India. So this will actually also solve a lot of problems or disputes that are about land. Proper mapping will be done using drone technology and continuously operating reference station. All these high-tech machineries will be used for accurate mapping and distribution. So the mapping will be done across the country, but in a phase-wise manner from 2020 to 2024. Then it will help in revenue collection, obviously. Better quality gram panchayat development plans can be taken place once what area is used for what purposes. Then the program is currently being implemented in 6 states and not all at once: Haryana, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and Uttarakhand. Now consider the following statements with respect to International Maritime Organization. It is a specialized agency of the UN. It is involved in legal matters, including liability and compensation issues and the facilitation of international maritime traffic. It is a universal organization. So remember, whenever we say universal organization, that means that all the nation states, all the recognized nation states are party to this. Now select the correct statement using the code given below. Again, you can pause, select the correct answer. It is D, 1 and 2. So IMO, that is International Maritime Organization, is a specialized agency of United Nations. You need to know the specialized agency of UN. Then IMO is responsible for measures to improve the safety and security of international shipping and to prevent pollution from ship. It is involved in legal matters as well, all kind of liabilities, compensation issues, facilitation of international maritime traffic. All these issues can arise between the littoral countries, right? Different littoral countries. It was established in Geneva on 17th March 1948 and met for the first time in January 1959. It currently has 174 member states. Okay, so it is not universal. Then MARPOL, we have already actually seen MARPOL. It's just that MARPOL convention was actually adopted by IMO. Then consider the following statements. The Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing is an agreement under UNCCD. The Nagoya Protocol applies to genetic resources as well as traditional knowledge associated with the genetic resources. Select the correct statement using the code given below. So the answer to this is B, 2 only. This was in news because Brazil became 130th country to ratify the Nagoya Protocol. It ratified it, meaning that it must have passed some kind of legislation in its parliament. It was adopted on 29th October 2010 in Nagoya, Japan, as a supplementary agreement to Convention on Biological Diversity and not UNCCD. It is about land. This is about biological diversity. So fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from utilization of genetic resources, thereby contributing to conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. Now this term utilization, it includes research and development on the genetic or biochemical composition of genetic resources, as well as subsequent applications and commercialization. So you know how big pharma companies can actually profit on any kind of traditional knowledge that a particular forest dwelling community might have. Okay, this is just for example, right? So a forest dwelling community has some kind of traditional knowledge and uses some kind of medicinal plant for a particular set of diseases. A pharma company comes across it, tries to study that particular plant, takes it up, and then earns large profits by making medicines out of it. Now it has to share the benefits, right, with the community from which it took the plant. So this is just an example of what Nagoya Protocol actually monitors. So it applies to genetic resources as well as the traditional knowledge associated with any genetic resources. Now, 3 core obligations are there for its contracting parties: access obligation, benefit sharing obligation, compliance obligation. The Nagoya Protocol and the Biological Diversity Act 2002 was passed by India actually to ratify this particular Nagoya Protocol, right? And we were actually the 5th country to ratify this. We have ratified it long time ago. Next, following are the findings of State of the Global Climate 2020 released by World Meteorological Organization. Emission of major greenhouse gases increased in 2019 and 2020. In summer of 2020, drop in sea level was recorded due to lockdowns across the world. Over 80% of the ocean area experienced at least one marine heat wave in 2020. Select the correct statement. So you can pause, and the correct answer is 1 and 3. So WMO has released this particular report, State of the Global Climate. It is an annual report. The WMO issued first such report in 1993. 3. So since then, every year this is released. In the recent report, all key climate indicators and impact information provided show relentless and continuing climate change. So just because 1 year has passed wherein some kind of emissions were low, like because of pandemic, a lot of things were shut down, and so our emissions were low. Pollutants that we released into atmosphere were bit low, but that does not mean that the entire process of climate change will be reversed, right? Which we have created over the past few years. Then an increasing occurrence and intensification of high impact events and severe losses and damages affecting people, societies, and economies. All these things are going on. Now, key findings: the past 6 years, including 2020, have been the 6 warmest years on record, wherein temperature reached 38 degrees Celsius. Now, this is for example per se, 38 degrees Celsius at Verkhoyansk, Russia. This is the highest recorded temperature anywhere north of Arctic Circle. We know that north of Arctic Circle and south of Antarctic Circle, they are very cold areas where temperature of 38 degrees Celsius is very very high. It is a heat wave. So the report provides 5 key indicators of irreversible changes in the global climate. Okay, this term is important. Indicators of irreversible changes, and these 5 indicators are also important for you to remember: greenhouse gases, oceans, sea level rise, the Arctic and the Antarctic. The Arctic and the Antarctic are very important in showing you the effects of climate change. Next question. Consider the following statement regarding flue gas desulfurization. It is a set of technology used to remove sulfur dioxide from exhaust flue gases. It is highly reliable and energy and utility savings. Select the correct statement using the code given below. Sorry, I did not give you time. So yeah, the answer is D, neither 1 nor 2. Just a second. So here, okay, right. So this it is a set of technology used to remove sulfur dioxide. Then it is highly reliable. So both the statements are correct, and it should be C here and not D. Okay, so that's my mistake. So flue gas desulfurization, it is a set of technology used to remove sulfur dioxide from exhaust flue gases generating in furnaces, boilers, and other processes due to thermal processing, treatment, and combustion. It involves wet scrubbing or dry scrubbing. You do not go into the detail of this. Just remember, wet scrubbing is the most common thing to pull down the sulfur. It is highly reliable and energy and utility saving, right? Then the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change had pushed the deadline for thermal power plant by up to 3 years for complying emission norms in the country. So this was in news because the compliance year is extended now. Initially, India had said 2017 deadline, and then after also it extended. Now again it has been extended because of pandemic. We know that a lot of our climate change targets are extended. Sorry. Consider following statements. According to Global Energy Review, coal demand has dropped while renewables usage grew as compared to pre-COVID-19 level. The electricity demand that is due to increase in 2001 is lower than the decline in 2020. Then it is released by International Energy Agency. So pause, and the correct answer is C, only 1 and 3. So actually increase in 2021, the energy demand increase in 2021 is going to be much higher than what was the decline in 2020, because you know that a lot of places were shut down, and hence the energy demand had lowered, because of which a lot of emissions were also lowered, right? But in 2021 the demand is going to be even higher. So International Energy Agency released the annual Global Energy Review, which assesses the direction of energy demand and carbon dioxide emission. So it is just an annual report, right? And International Energy Agency releases it. Then next, consider the following statements. The Indian Rhino Vision 2020 started in 2020 and is expected to be achieved in 5 years. Then International Rhino Foundation and the US Fish and Wildlife Services are the international partner involved. So the correct answer here is 2 only. So this is a very important thing, because Indian Rhino Vision has officially ended now. right? And it ended with translocation of two rhinos to Manas National Park from Pubitora Wildlife Sanctuary in Assam. So it was launched in 2005. It was an ambitious effort to attain a wild population of at least 3,000 greater one-horned rhinos spread over 7 protected areas in Indian state of Assam by the year 2020. Hence, it was named as Rhino Vision 2020. Now, 7 protected areas are Kaziranga, Pubitora, Orang National Park, Manas National Park, Laukoa Wildlife Sanctuary, and Burachapuri Wildlife Sanctuary, and Dibru Saikova Wildlife Sanctuary. Right? You need to just have a rough idea of, in which state these are situated. Sometimes it can just pop up in matched pairs. Then wild to wild translocations were an essential part of this particular IRB 2020. Moving rhinos from densely populated parks like Kaziranga National Park, we know it has the highest population of rhinoceros, to ones in need of more rhinos like Manas National Park. So all these protected areas have, environment or the habitat suitable for rhinoceros, and we need to redistribute these, because we know this particular concept that if a particular population, for example, if rhinos are concentrated in only one area, and if some kind of disease or some kind of natural calamity affects that area, then we might simply lose the entire population, and we will also not have them in any other protected area. That is why it is very important to carry out the translocations. So this was the vision. Now, it is a collaborative effort between various organizations, including the International Rhino Foundation, Assam's Forest Department, Bodoland Territorial Council, Worldwide Fund India, and the US Fish and Wildlife Services. So, the numbers have increased. What our vision was to get up to 3,000, right? But the population has increased to up to 3,550, which is a 38% increase in the 9 years. So the target of attaining a population to 3,000 has been achieved, but the animal could be reintroduced only in one of the 4 protected areas, that is Manas National Park, right? So the other areas where we wanted to, go beyond the Kaziranga National Park or the Orang National Park, it could not materialize. So the translocated rhinos helped Manas National Park to get back its World Heritage Site status in 2011. So in these 9 years, translocations happened of rhinoceros to the Manas National Park, and the World Heritage Site tag, which it had lost, was regained in 2011. Remember that this is an important thing. First of all, Manas National Park has a World Heritage Site tag now, and second, it was lost, but it got it back in 2011. So next question, consider the following statement. Public Enterprises Selection Board is a statutory body. Second, it works under guidance of Ministry of Home Affairs. Third, it is responsible for appointment of personnel in the post of chairman and managing director, and functional directors in public sector enterprises. So this is one of the very important, you know, not issue per se, but part of current affair. So select the correct statement using the code given below. So the solution to this is only 3, and if you solved it correctly, you have a very good command on current affairs. So Malika Srinivasan, who is the CMD of Tractors and Farm Equipment Limited, was actually appointed as a new chairperson of Public Enterprises Selection Board. And this is very important because for the first time, the person is from private sector. Otherwise, it is always from the public enterprise, from any public sector enterprise. The chairperson was usually appointed, but this time it is from a private sector. So Public Enterprise Selection Board is an executive body. It is not a statutory body. It was created by Government of India resolution. Then it works under Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions. And its objective is to evolve sound managerial practices across PSEs, and hence it carries out all those appointments. And next, consider the following statements. Cloud bursts are generally more common in India during the winter season due to low pressure buildup. Second, National Disaster Management Authority is the nodal agency responsible for monitoring the relief operation. Select the correct statements using the code given below. So the correct answer here is solution B, 2 only. So recently, cloudburst was observed in Uttarakhand's Chamoli, Tehri, and Rudraprayag districts. So these are sudden and extreme rainfall events over a limited area in a short span of time. That's why these are called bursts, right? The Indian Meteorological Department defines cloudburst as any event where 100 millimeter of rainfall have fallen in a span of 1 hour over a region that is 20 to 30 square kilometers in area. Then, yes, NDMA, that is National Disaster Management Authority, is the nodal agency responsible for monitoring relief operation. And the second important point is it is generally more common in India during southwest monsoon because it brings all the moisture laden clouds, right? And when these clouds, get accumulated near mountain areas, the cloud bursts can happen. So it happens mostly in the monsoon season, southwest monsoon season. So here's just an overview of how this can happen. The buildup of the clouds can take place in the mountainous region where there's a lack of air density, and then on steep slopes, flash floods can occur. Right? So you can just go over that. It's very fairly easy. Then consider the following statements regarding off-budget financing. This is also another important part of the budget this year. So off-budget borrowings are loans that are taken by the center directly. Then money raised through off-budget financing is not reflected in fiscal deficit. This year budget stops off-budget financing. Select the correct statement using the code given below. And the answer to this is B, 2 and 3. So, off-budget borrowings are loans that are taken not by the center directly but by another public institution which borrows on the direction of central government, right? So let's take an example. Okay, so FCI has to buy FCI has to buy food grains on MSPs, right? But for that it will need to have a lot of money. So what government does is that it does not borrow the money or it does not give FCI the money from Consolidated Fund of India, but it asks FCI to borrow the money on behalf, or rather on its own, right, from either from market or from schemes such as National Small Savings Fund. So that is what is given here. This has been going on for a long time now, and these borrowings are not in government's budget, right? Now and this is because the loan is not taken directly by the government. So in 2020-21, the economic survey, or in the budget, the government paid only half of the amount budgeted for the food subsidy bill. So this is the example, to the Food Corporation of India. And whatever the shortfall was, the other half, it was made by the loans taken from National Small Saving Fund, in which all the population from India, they deposit their money in the National Small Saving schemes. So this allowed center to halve its food subsidy bill. So whatever bill it showed in its budget document was actually half of what it actually was, right? So this is the same thing. So this simply means that fiscal deficit is actually quite higher than what we usually see in the government budget. So government has decided that this time we are not going to continue this particular thing because it actually deceives the public, and fiscal deficit has been actually quite higher. So this time also we know that because of the pandemic the government had to take up a lot of expenditure, and also because of this particular step that was taken by government of stopping the off budget financing, our fiscal deficit reached up to very new high levels of 9 or so. The next question: which of the following statement is or are correct about gender gap report 2021? It is released by World Economic Forum. Years required to close the gender gap have reduced than previously projected. India is the third worst performing among South Asian countries. Answer to this is D, both A and C. So the years required to close the gender gap have actually increased than previously projected. So recently, World Economic Forum has released the Global Gender Gap Report. The index was first introduced in 2006 as a framework to benchmark progress on disparities between women and men across countries and over time. So the 2021 report benchmarks 156 countries across 4 thematic dimensions. The overall global gender gap is projected to close in 135.6 years. So it's going to take almost 1.5 century to close the gender gap, which is significantly higher than 99.5, meaning almost a century in the previous report. So global top 10 countries continue to be the Nordic countries, the Finland, Sweden, and with Iceland, Norway, Finland, and Sweden in the top 5. Then South Asia is the second lowest performer after Middle East and North Africa combined, bridging 62.3% of its gender gap. Impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the gender gap, right? So obviously we all know that a lot of reports that are coming out, COVID-19 pandemic is going to be the focus here also. Women experienced both higher unemployment rates and a more subdued re-entry into the employment. For example, ILO estimates projected that 5% of all employed women lost their jobs globally versus 3.9% of employed men. Future gender gaps are likely to be driven by occupation segregation in emerging roles, which in turn would lead to wage inequality again, right? So occupation segregation herein means that a particular set of jobs will be available only to men and a particular set of jobs will be available only to women. Like now also work from home job, like a lot of women who were let go rather, who lost their jobs while re-entering into the workforce. Either it is very difficult to get those jobs, or that is why they are having to settle from work from home jobs, such as data entry jobs or surveying jobs like that. Whereas men will still stay in a lot of executive positions, let's say, or in administration. So this kind of occupation segregation might take place. Then performance of India, what has been? So India has slipped by a whopping 28 places as compared to last year, to the rank of 140th among 156 countries. India is third worst performer among South Asian countries, with Pakistan and Afghanistan trailing and Bangladesh being at the top. So Bangladesh is actually doing good, right? Then India has closed 62.5% only of its gender gap to date. So we might take a lot than average. Next question. Consider the following statement. Malaria is transmitted through bites of infected Aedes aegypti mosquito. It is caused by a virus. Then India represents 3% of the global malaria burden. So answer to this question is B, 3 only. Okay. So reaching the zero malaria target, right? So Malaria Day was there, right? So on this occasion, WHO launched E2025 initiative, under which the group of 25 countries have been identified that have the potential to stamp out malaria within 5-year timeline. We also know that malaria affected countries are mostly in the tropical areas. Then there's Africa, right? Malaria is prevalent in South Asia as well. Now these countries will receive specialized support and technical guidance as they work towards target of zero malaria. Earlier in 2017, WHO launched E2020 initiative to support 21 countries in their efforts to get zero malaria within the 2020 timeline. But again, COVID-19 has sidelined everything. Then other than that, so malaria is transmitted through bites of infected female Anopheles mosquito, right, and not Aedes aegypti mosquito. And the causative agent is actually Plasmodium, which is a protozoa, not a virus. You can remember that. And yes, the third one is correct. India represents 3% of the global malaria burden. Which of the following global conventions talk about women's reproductive rights? So this is time and again in news. We know that, right? Like how much control women have on their own body, or what choices they can make about themselves, right? So we need to regulate that. Governments need to regulate that, because more often than not, a lot of women are pressured into things that they are not comfortable with, right? Then there's also societal pressure. If somebody is not bearing child or something like that, so virtually a lot of women do not have right on their own body. So there are different conventions. First, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, 1996. Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the Sustainable Development Goals. Select the correct statements using the code given below. So the answer is D, all of the above. So I have simply given you a few conventions that support reproductive rights. You can use this in essay writing or mains writing, whatever. So International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, then Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action of the Fourth World Conference on Women. Now this has been, quite in news also, so that is why I have included this question. The Sustainable Development Goals and the preceding Millennium Development Goals also encompass several goals that directly as well as indirectly recognize reproductive rights. Then Target 5.6 of SDG, if we talk concurrently, it ensures universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following countries is the largest millet producer in the world? Option is India, Niger, China, Nigeria. And your answer here is India. So India, Niger and China are the largest producers of millets in the world, and they account for more than 55% of the global production, right? So remember this just as a piece of information, because millet has a role to play in poverty alleviation and it has been quite in news. Next question, let's see. Consider the following statements and then identify the crop from all those statements given. So the crop in question is a photosensitive crop. They're generally thermophilic, photo-insensitive crop. They're generally thermophilic and xerophilic. It is resistant to climate stress, most pests and diseases. It requires very low to no fertilization and are not irrigation dependent. It can be grown on dry lands, and Rajasthan is the leading producer in India. So obviously all of information about this crop is given in these 5 sentences only, and the crop is millet, B again, right? So it is photoinsensitive, meaning that the daytime does not affect, yeah, if it varies, right? It is not necessary for it to have a constantly, you know, uh, constant exposure to sun or constant exposure to dark. A lot of plants growth depend on how much the daytime is or how much the night time is, but not for millet. Then they're generally thermophilic. They grow well in semi-arid areas, right? So if the temperature is high, it doesn't matter to them, they can grow well. And then they are xerophilic, meaning in that they can grow in dry soils, right? Soils where it's there's low water, so they can easily grow in rain-fed areas, right? Where there is, you know, a lot of irrigation is not available. It is resistant to climatic stress, most pests and diseases. It is also drought resistance. Why? Because it can grow in dry area. Then it requires very low to no fertilization. It is not irrigation dependent. It can grow on dry lands. So all these are the characteristics. Then millets are linked with poverty alleviation efforts and reducing malnutrition, as they are less input intensive and are nutritious, right? And the productivity can be actually increased. It can provide livelihood security to small and marginal farmers. It can be used for human consumption as well as for animals. It can be used as fodder. Then variety of millets are grown in India, such as sorghum, bajra, ragi. Out of that, kodo millet has originated in India. It is one of the highest drought-resistant variety. Remember this name also. Then pearl millet is most widely used and cultivated after rice, wheat, and maize in India. Okay, so this is a very important crop to remember whenever you talk about poverty alleviation and tackling hunger or malnutrition. Then consider following statements. As per the Constitution of India, the senior most judge of Supreme Court is appointed as Chief Justice of India. The Chief Justice of India and the judges of Supreme Court are appointed by the President under Clause 2 of Article 124 of the Constitution. So answer to this particular question is 2 only. So this is in news because Justice N.V. Raman has become the CJI recently, right? A new appointment has taken place. Then as per the convention, it is the convention that outgoing Chief Justice of India actually recommends the name of senior most justice of the Supreme Court. Then Supreme Court in second judge's case of 1993, we know that there have been the judges cases, ruled that only senior most judge can be appointed as CJI, right? Chief Justice of India. So it is by this particular case. But again, we know that there has been times, right, wherein senior most judge was not appointed. For example, when there was the prime ministership of Indira Gandhi ji, right? Then Union Law Minister forwards the recommendation to Prime Minister, who in turn then advises the President. So this is again the same thing, you know. It is not a discretionary power of President. Next, which of the following is or are true regarding administrative powers of Chief Justice of India? So he or she is administrative head of the court. He or she has prerogative of allocating cases to particular benches and decides the number of judges on a case. Prerogative meaning it is in their hand only to do so. Then administrative powers can be exercised without collegial consensus. You know that for a lot of things, consensus of the collegium or you know a group of judges or the senior most judges is required. For example, appointing uh, other Supreme Court judges, right? So out of these three, the correct answer is D, all of the above, right? So this is all about this particular question actually. That's the only thing you need to know. Then consider the following statements. Lok Adalats cannot hear cases pending in court of law. Award of Lok Adalat is final and no appeal lies in the court, in any court. Matters related to non-compoundable offence shall not be settled in Lok Adalat. Remember, Lok Adalat is a very, very important institution in India. Okay, to help us reduce the number of pending cases and for you know justice to reach masses. So select the correct statement using the code given below. So the answer to this is B, 2 and 3. So Lok Adalats have been given statutory status under the Legal Services Authorities Act of 1987. So we are going to see, you know, the statements that are given there. It will be covered, don't worry. Its award has a decree of civil court and no appeal lies in any court, right? So this is true. No appeal lies in any court. But if the parties are not satisfied with the, you know, verdict, they should have somewhere to go to, right? So they can actually go to any court, any appropriate court which has the jurisdiction, but they have to file a fresh litigation, a fresh case. So there's no appeal, there's a fresh case. The persons deciding the cases in Lok Adalats are called the members of Lok Adalats. They have the role of statutory conciliators and they do not have the judicial role. They are actually conciliating between the two disputed parties, right? It is a part of alternate dispute resolution. So that is why only compoundable matter are also taken place. So we'll see this. Nature of cases that are to be referred to Lok Adalats include any case pending before any court. So sub judice matter can be taken. Then any dispute which has not been brought before any court and is likely to be filed before the court. Any matter relating to an offence not compoundable under the law shall not be settled in Lok Adalat. This is a very, very important point. So, compoundable meaning under IPC, if the particular offence, you know, you can come to an understanding between the two parties. There can be an understanding between the two parties even after the case is filed. But then there are certain offenses, right? For example, the offense of rape or murder, wherein they are not compoundable in nature, right? You cannot simply come expect the two parties to come to an understanding. In this case, these matters go to higher courts only. Lok Adalat has no work there. Then Lok Adalats were in news this time because of the issue of quality of justice. Now, as I said, that Lok Adalats are very important because of, you know, speedy justice to reduce the number of pending cases. So, in the endeavor for speedy disposal of cases, it undermines the idea of justice. It is also found out because there is just always a hurry of reaching to an understanding. In majority of cases, litigations are pitted against, litigants, that is the parties involved, are pitted against the entities with deep pockets such as insurance companies, banks, electricity boards. So basically what happens is that poor usually do not get, you know, the justice. So in many cases, companies are compromises are imposed on the poor who often have no choices but to accept them. And then again, they cannot, you know, afford to go through this whole process again and again by the way of fresh litigation. In most cases, such litigants have to accept the discounted future values of their claims instead of their just entitlements. or small compensation, just to bring a long pending legal process to an end because they cannot go on. Similarly, poor women under the so called harmony ideology of the state are virtually dictated by family courts to compromise matrimonial disputes under a romanticized view of marriage. So, simply to uphold the sanctity of marriage in the view of law or in the view of society, a lot of time women are, expected to compromise more, and these things also happen under Lok Adalats. Then even a disaster like Bhopal gas tragedy was coercively settled by for a paltry sum, with real justice still eluding thousands of victims. This is a good example of that. Then consider following statement, because that was also a point of monetary compensation. The Bhopal gas tragedy. Dark matter is completely invisible to light and magnetic radiation. 27% of universe is composed of dark matter. We know that dark matter exists because of the effect it has on objects that we can observe directly. So select the correct statement. The answer is D, all of the above. So the dark matter is completely invisible. It has no effect of light or magnetic radiation, which is why we cannot directly observe it. And now we also know that almost more than 60% of the universe is filled with dark energy, right? 27% of the universe is composed of dark matter, and then rest almost 5% is composed of the matter that we see. Then we know that dark matter exists because of the effect that it has on objects, so we can only indirectly observe dark matter via the objects that we can actually observe. So it only affects the gravity. So far, that is what we have discovered. Next question. Consider the following statement. So Puttaswamy judgment of 2017 is related to right to privacy. The judgment holds that right to privacy is protected as a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. The court also held that informational privacy in the age of internet is not an absolute right. Okay. So answer to this particular question is D, all of the above. So at least until India has a better data protection law, like we do not have any right now, but unless we get a proper law, and even a few years after that, this particular case will always be of relevance. Okay. So the retired Justice Puttaswamy had challenged the constitutionality of Aadhaar before the Supreme Court by filing a writ petition. So that was the case. It was held that privacy concerns in this day and age of technology can arise from both the state as well as non-state entities, and as such a claim of violation of privacy lies against both of them. So just because government is taking your data doesn't always mean that it is a legitimate thing to do. Government can also misuse your data, right? So the litigations can be against both of them. Then the has also court also held that informational privacy in the age of internet is not absolute, right? Because frankly speaking, all of your data is already everywhere, right? So that is not an absolute right. And when an individual exercises his right to control over his data, it may lead to the violation of his privacy to a considerable extent, which has to be now compromisable. It was also laid down that the ambit of Article 21 is ever expanding due to the agreement over the years among Supreme Court judges, as a result of which a plethora of rights has been included within Article 21. Then, and we know that Article 21 is about the right to liberty and life. The Supreme Court also declared that the right to privacy is not an absolute right, and any incursion of privacy by state or non-state actors must satisfy following triple test. Legitimate aim, particular policy which is breaching your privacy should have legitimate aim. Proportionality, do not collect unnecessary data. Then legality, right? If there is a proper legal route for this. Okay. So privacy, Justice Puttaswamy case, then it is the right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21, and these three terms you need to remember all these things. Next, consider the following statements. Lingaraj temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva. It follows the Deula style of Kalinga architecture. Its construction was completed in 2nd century CE. So we all know that in small sections of the Hindi newspaper, we always get some or the other ancient sites and all that. So we need to note them as well, because what else are you going to prepare for ancient static and these things. So select the correct statement. A, sorry, why am I reading those? So the right answer is 1 and 2 only. Now, the Lingaraj temple. So these are the basic things that you need to know, and I think you will be able to answer. It is dedicated to Lord Shiva, largest temple in Bhubaneswar. It is the largest temple in Bhubaneswar and was completed in 11th century, right? And not in 2nd century. Then it follows Deula style of Kalinga architecture, and this style broadly comes under Nagara style. We know that broadly temples that were constructed in north come under Nagara style. Then built by King Jajati Keshari of Somvansh. This can also be asked. In ancient India, yes, there are things that are asked which you need to learn, you need to mug them up. Lingaraj is referred to as Swayambhu here, okay, self originated Shivling. So, this much information is enough. Next, consider the following statement. Model Code of Conduct is mentioned in Article 324 of Indian Constitution. MCC was first implemented in the general election of 1991. So now state elections have taken place again. These things are going to be in news. So the correct statement you have to tell, it's D, none. Okay. So the origin of MCC actually lies in assembly elections of Kerala in 1960, right? Wherein it was referred to as Code of Conduct for political actors. But the Model Code of Conduct is a consensus based among political parties. It was first used by Election Commission of India in 1971 general election. It is not mentioned in the constitution. It has no legal backing. But election symbols, preservation and allotment order 1968 allows commission to suspend or withdraw recognition of recognized party if they refuse to follow MCC. So that is where you can actually implement it, but it has no legal backing otherwise other than that, and it is not mentioned in constitution. Then certain provisions of MCC may also be enforced through invoking or by invoking corresponding provisions in other statutes such as the IPC 1860 or the CRPC 1973 and the Representation of People's Act of 1951. So MCC itself does not penalize you, but if you refuse to follow MCC or if you do not follow certain provision, then the party can be penalized under these separate acts. So MCC is operational from the date on which election schedule is announced until the date of result announcement. This is also important to remember. Next, consider the following statement with respect to GDP linked bond. GDP linked bonds are sovereign debt instruments with repayments linked to the evolution of a country's GDP. Costa Rica, Bulgaria, and Bosnia Herzegovina issued the first pure GDP linked bonds in 1990s. You have to select the correct statement. So answer is C. Both of the statements are correct. So GDP linked bonds are actually sovereign debt instruments, right? So the government of the day will issue these, and they are linked to evolution of country's GDP, meaning that the interest that has to be paid on such debt instruments or such GDP linked bonds will depend upon the GDP of the country at that particular time period. If the country's economy is flourishing, if the GDP is high, high interest rate will be paid. But if the GDP is lower and the economy is not doing so well, then low interest rate will have to be paid. So in a way, these particular bonds, will be this debt, will be sustainable for a few years. So that is why these are linked to GDP. So yes, and Costa Rica, Bulgaria, Bosnia Herzegovina have issued these, but India so far has not issued. But this was in news because government of India may issue Indian rupee denominated 25-year GDP linked bonds to raise the finances for government's relief package. So the COVID-19 relief package, we know a lot of funds have to be raised for that. So government will borrow, right? It will borrow from the market. So it has now decided that we can actually, so it may um, issue these GDP linked bonds, and the issuer of for example GOI is liable to pay lower coupon during year of slower growth and vice versa. Next question. Consider the following statement about Kaladan Multimodal Transit Project. So this particular project is entirely based on sea route. It involves India, Bangladesh and Myanmar. The project is being implemented with Government of India's grant assistance under the head of Aid to Myanmar. So you can pause, and the right answer is C, 3 only, right? So the project is being implemented with Government of India's grant assistant under the head of Aid to Myanmar. So Kaladan Multimodal Project. So this was in news because it is close to completion, but the last leg is taking a long time, right? So this is the particular map. You can go through this. This does not consider only the sea route, right? It takes so the part of this is through river. Then there's national highways of Myanmar, of India, right? So from Calcutta to Sitwe port, then to Paletwa, and then through Zorinpui opening that is there, or the border opening that is there between Myanmar and the Indian state of Mizoram. We can reach to this Long Plai, please pardon my pronunciation, by river route, and then from there to Ajol, which is the capital city of Mizoram. We can go by the road route. So this is the basic thing you need to know. Then next question is, what is the fair use of copyright? It is a legal doctrine that promotes freedom of expression by permitting unlicensed use of copyright protected work in certain circumstances. These can be for criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships, and enhancing research. So you can pause, and the answer is both 1 and 2. So Google used, so this is very important actually and interesting as well. So this was dubbed as, the case of the century. So Google had used Sun Microsystems Java. We know that it is a computing language, and in its Android technology, Google used it. And for that, it copied some 11,000 lines of that long program. And this was needed to allow programmers to work everywhere on Android systems using the Java. But it did not take the permission of the particular company, right? Or the Oracle. So Supreme Court in the US considered this particular, copying of this program without permission as fair use of copyright. Why did it consider as fair use of copyright? Because it allowed Android system to flourish so much and helped workers all over, right, to use this language easily and uniformly. So we need to understand, does India have any of kind of fair use of Copyright Act? So in case of India, Copyright Act 1957 section 52 lays down certain acts or works that cannot be considered as an infringement of copyright and are considered fair dealings. A fair dealing with a literary, dramatic, musical or artistic work for the purposes of research or private study, criticism or review, whether of that work or of any other work. A fair dealing with literally, dramatic, musical, or artistic work for the purposes of reporting current events in newspaper, magazine, or similar periodical, or by broadcast, or in cinematographic film, or by means of photographs. So there are these are certain areas wherein you can use the material without permission of the original author, right? So that comes under fair dealings. So yes, this was today's video. A lot of important topics have been covered through this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please like, share and subscribe to our channel Holistic Facts, and keep revising. Thank you.